In the streets of Lagos, power is everything. The rich sit in their glass towers, controlling the city like kings, while the rest of us fight just to survive. I was never supposed to matter to them. I was just a taxi driver's daughter, lost in the chaos of the city. But then, one ride changed everything. One man, one mistake, and suddenly, I was caught in a world I never belonged to. A world of billionaires, betrayal, and dangerous secrets. They thought I would break. They thought I would run. But they forgot one thing. I was never just a taxi driver's daughter. The honk of impatient Lagos traffic and the sharp scent of hot pavement filled the air as Zara Okoye leaned against her father's dented yellow taxi, wiping sweat from her forehead. The sun beat down mercilessly, but she barely noticed. She had grown up in the streets of Lagos, where heat, noise, and hustle were part of everyday survival. Zara, abeg enter motor, make we move, her father, Baba Okoye, called from the driver's seat. She sighed and climbed in. Their family had been in the taxi business for years. But lately, things had been rough. Ride-hailing companies and big transport corporations were driving small taxi owners out of business. And at the center of it all, Royal Rides International, the billion-dollar empire owned by the powerful Obiagu family, a family Zara had every reason to hate. Her father started the engine just as a well-dressed man in an expensive black suit pushed through the crowd, looking impatient. He tapped on the window. "You're taking passengers or just sitting here wasting space?" Zara turned sharply, ready to clap back. But then she saw his face, sharp jawline, piercing eyes, arrogance dripping from every inch of him. It was Keneto Obiagu, the heir to the same company trying to destroy her father's livelihood. Fate had just dropped her worst enemy into her taxi. And he had no idea. Zara's fingers tightened around the steering wheel, her pulse quickening as she stared at the man standing outside the taxi. Keneto Obiagu, the golden boy of Royal Rides International, billionaire heir, walking definition of privilege and arrogance, and the same man whose family business was destroying small taxi drivers like her father. She should have ignored him, driven away, let him stand in the scorching Lagos sun with his designer suit and smug attitude. But before she could react, Baba Okoye leaned over and unlocked the door. "Enter inside, Oga," her father said, always the businessman. Zara clenched her teeth as Keneto slid into the back seat, moving like he owned the world. He barely glanced at her, pulling out his phone instead. She inhaled deeply, forcing her voice to stay neutral. "Where to?" "Victoria Island," he said without looking up. His tone was clipped, impatient, entitled. Zara's foot itched to slam the accelerator and send him flying into next week. Instead, she forced a smile. "That will be 15,000 naira. Keneto finally looked up, brows furrowing. "For a 20-minute ride? Are you insane?" Zara shrugged. "Traffic surcharge." "There is no traffic." "There will be." She met his gaze through the rearview mirror, her eyes daring him to argue. He let out an annoyed sigh, but pulled out his wallet anyway, peeling off crisp 1,000 naira notes like they were pocket change. She snatched the money and shoved it into her bag before shifting the taxi into drive. This was going to be a long ride. 5 minutes into the trip, Keneto was already getting on her nerves. First, he kept tapping on his phone loudly, muttering under his breath. Then he started giving her directions. "You're going the wrong way," he said, not even looking up. Zara gripped the steering wheel tighter. "I know Lagos better than you, Oga. Relax." Keneto scoffed. "No offense, but I don't trust street taxi drivers to know the fastest route." Zara slammed the brakes. The car behind them honked loudly as Keneto jerked forward, barely catching himself against the seat. He looked up, stunned. What the hell? Zara turned in her seat and faced him, face to face, eye to eye. Listen well, rich boy, she said, voice low but deadly. I've been driving these streets since I was 15. I know every pothole, every shortcut, every last-minute checkpoint, so sit back, shut up, and let me do my job. For the first time, Kaineto looked amused. A slow smirk tugged at his lips. You're really something, aren't you? Zara's heartbeat kicked up, but she refused to let him rattle her. Buckle up, she snapped, slamming the gas pedal, before I decide to throw you out. Kaineto chuckled, but this time he didn't argue. The ride continued in silence, until Zara took a sharp corner and the unexpected happened. The taxi's front tire burst. The car jerked violently, sending them swerving toward the curb. Zara reacted instantly, gripping the wheel and slamming the brakes. They screeched to a halt inches away from an oncoming truck. Zara's heart pounded as she took a shaky breath. From the back seat, Kaineto groaned. What the hell just happened? Zara cursed under her breath and stepped out of the car. She knelt by the deflated tire and ran a hand through her braids. Perfect. Just perfect. Kaineto got out too, adjusting his expensive watch like they hadn't just almost died. You don't have a spare? He asked. She shot him a glare. Of course I have a spare, but I don't have time to change it while your high-maintenance self is standing there complaining. Kaineto smirked. I could help. Zara laughed. You? Fix a tire? Please. He rolled up his sleeves. I wasn't always rich, you know. Zara folded her arms. Oh, really? When was the last time you changed a tire, Mr. Billionaire? Kaineto paused. Never. She burst out laughing. Exactly. Kaineto sighed, running a hand through his hair. Fine. What do you want me to do? Zara handed him the tire jack. Hold this, and don't drop it on your soft billionaire fingers. For the first time, Kaineto laughed. A real laugh. Zara didn't want to admit it, but for a brief moment, he almost seemed human. After a painfully slow tire change, because Kaineto was completely useless, Zara wiped her hands on a rag and checked the time. They were already 30 minutes late. Kaineto groaned. I'm missing an important meeting. Zara smirked. Welcome to Lagos life, Oga. As they climbed back into the car, Kaineto studied her. What's your name? Zara hesitated, but then lifted her chin. Zara. He nodded. Zara, I'll remember that. She rolled her eyes. Good for you. As she started the car, Kaineto suddenly said, I could offer you a job, you know. Zara froze. Her head snapped toward him. Excuse me? My company needs drivers, Kaineto said. You're reckless, but you're good. You should apply. Zara scoffed. Of all the insults. I'd rather drive this taxi till it dies than work for Royal Rides. Kaineto smirked. Your loss. Zara didn't respond. Because what he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Royal Rides International had nearly destroyed her family. And now, fate had put her face to face with its heir. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel. This wasn't just a taxi ride anymore. This was war. Zara couldn't stop thinking about that ride. The arrogant heir of Royal Rides International had sat in her father's taxi, smirked at her attitude, and, worst of all, offered her a job. A job at the same ruthless company that had driven small taxi drivers into the ground, including her own family. She should have laughed in his face. She should have kicked him out of the car. But instead, she had let his words linger, bothering her more than she wanted to admit. She hated everything about Kaineto Obiagu, his money, his power, his cocky smirk. But the truth was, she needed a plan. The taxis were dying. The business was failing, and she couldn't keep pretending otherwise. That evening, Zara sat at home with her father, Baba Okoye, who was carefully counting the day's earnings. His fingers were worn from years of hard work, and the pile of money was smaller than it should have been. She knew what that meant. The rent was due. The taxi had another repair coming up, and food prices weren't getting any cheaper. "Papa," she said cautiously, "we need to talk about the business." Baba Okoye sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Zara, I know what you want to say." "Then let's say it," she pressed. "The taxis aren't making enough. We need another plan." Her father looked at her, sadness in his eyes. "This taxi has fed us since you were a child. It's all I know." Zara's chest tightened. "I know, Papa, but things have changed. We have to change too." He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "So, what do you suggest?" Zara hesitated. She had already decided. She just didn't know how to say it. After a deep breath, she spoke. "I think I should take a job." Her father frowned. "What kind of job?" Zara hesitated, then forced the words out. "At Royal Rides International." The room went silent. Baba Okoye's entire face darkened. "You want to work for the people who destroyed our business?" he asked, voice heavy with disappointment. "It's just to get information," she explained quickly, "to understand how they work. If we know what they're planning, we can fight back." Her father shook his head. "No, Zara, that company is poison. The Obiagus are poison. You don't know these people. You don't know what they're capable of." Zara's fists clenched. "Then let me find out." The next morning, Zara made her way to Royal Rides International. The building was a glass fortress, towering over the streets like a kingdom of wealth and power. She hated it already. Zara marched inside, ignoring the curious glances from suit-wearing elites who clearly didn't think she belonged there. At the reception desk, a perfectly dressed woman barely spared her a glance. "Do you have an appointment?" Zara squared her shoulders. "Tell Kaineto Obiagu that Zara Okoye is here." The receptionist raised a brow, but picked up the phone. After a moment, she nodded. "Go to the 20th floor. He's expecting you." Zara blinked. "He's expecting me?" That meant he knew she would come. The arrogant bastard. Kaineto was waiting in his luxurious office, leaning casually against his desk with that infuriating smirk on his face. "I knew you'd show up," he said, crossing his arms. Zara rolled her eyes. "Don't flatter yourself. I'm here for business, not you." His smirk deepened. "Whatever helps you sleep at night, taxi girl." She ignored him and got straight to the point. "You said your company needs drivers." I want in Kaineto studied her for a moment. "And why would someone like you want to work for the enemy?" Zara kept her expression unreadable. "Because money is money." He let out a low chuckle. "You don't even try to hide your hatred, do you?" "No," she said bluntly. "Now, are you offering the job or not?" Kaineto leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. "Fine, but there's one condition." Zara raised an eyebrow. "What condition?" "You won't just be a driver," he said. "You'll be my personal driver." Zara stiffened. "Excuse me?" Kaineto leaned back, looking entirely too pleased with himself. "You'll drive me around Lagos, be at my beck and call. Every time I need a ride, you'll be the one behind the wheel." Zara's blood boiled. "Are you serious?" she demanded. "Completely," Kaineto said. "Take it or leave it." Did Zara accept the offer? Or was it all a trap? What do you think? Drop a comment below and then watch the episode to uncover the shocking truth. And if you love this story, hit like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching. The Taxi Driver's Daughter, episode continuation. Every fiber of Zara's being screamed at her to walk away. She should have. But then she thought about her father, the failing business, the weight of responsibility crushing her. She had no choice, so she made the hardest decision of her life. "Fine," she said through gritted teeth. Kenito smiled, that infuriating arrogant smile like he had already won. "Perfect," he said smoothly. "See you at 8 a.m. Sharp. Don't be late, taxi girl." Zara hated him, but she was in, and she was about to find out just how dangerous his world really was. The next morning, Zara arrived at Royal Rides International at exactly 7:59 a.m., not a second late. She stepped out of the taxi, adjusting the collar of her plain black polo. The towering glass skyscraper in front of her gleamed in the morning sun, a monument of wealth and power. A world she didn't belong to. But she wasn't here to belong. She was here to survive. Taking a deep breath, she marched toward the entrance, her footsteps firm, steady, unshaken. If Kenito wanted a game, she was ready to play. The moment she stepped inside, Zara felt the stares. Men in polished suits, women in designer heels, all turning their heads as if her presence had contaminated their air. She ignored them. Dressed in her best-fitting jeans and a black polo shirt, she looked professional, but she refused to wear the stiff uniforms the company provided. She would drive Kenito around, but she wouldn't become one of them. She walked straight to the front desk, where a stunning receptionist, her nails painted in perfect gold tips, barely spared her a glance. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, her tone dripping with boredom. Zara lifted her chin. "I'm here for Kaineto Obiagu." The receptionist raised an eyebrow. Then slowly she scanned Zara's worn-out jeans, simple polo, and no-nonsense expression. "And you are?" "Zara Okoye," she said, "his new driver." For a split second, something flashed across the woman's face. Shock, confusion, maybe even amusement. Then she laughed, a quiet, dismissive chuckle. "Oh, you're the one." Before Zara could respond, the elevator doors slid open, and out stepped Kenito, looking as untouchable as ever. A tailored navy blue suit, an expensive watch that probably cost more than her father's entire taxi fleet, and that infuriating smirk like the world was his to command. His eyes locked onto hers. "You're early," he said, his voice smooth, teasing. Zara crossed her arms. "Disappointed?" Kenito chuckled. "Not yet." Then he nodded toward the elevator. "Come on, taxi girl. Let's see if you can keep up." Zara didn't move immediately. Because in that moment, standing in the heart of his empire, she felt it, the shift, the trap, the point of no return. She wasn't just a driver anymore. She was stepping into a world where one wrong move could destroy her. And for the first time, she wondered, had she made a mistake? The elevator ride with Kenito was silent, but Zara could feel his presence like a weight in the small space. His confidence was unshaken, his stance casual, as if he was in complete control of everything, including her. She refused to let him get inside her head. The doors slid open, and she followed him through the sleek, glass-walled corridors of Royal Rides International. Employees glanced their way, whispering. Some stared at Kenito with admiration, others at her with confusion or amusement, like she was a joke. Zara kept her head high. She wasn't here to impress these people. She was here to survive, and maybe, just maybe, to win. The moment she stepped into the underground parking lot, she spotted the car waiting for her, a sleek black Range Rover. Shiny, powerful, the kind of car meant for men like him. Through the tinted windows, she could already see Kenito inside, lounging like a king in his throne, phone in hand, completely unbothered. He didn't even glance at her as she slid into the driver's seat. The scent of his expensive cologne filled the car, a mix of power and arrogance. "Right on time," he murmured, still looking at his phone. His voice was smooth, almost impressed. Zara smirked. Disappointed? His lips twitched. Not yet. Zara rolled her eyes and revved the engine harder than necessary, letting the sound echo through the parking lot. "Where to, boss?" she asked, voice dripping with sarcasm. Keineto finally looked up, his dark eyes locking onto hers through the mirror. That same smirk, that same cocky amusement. "Take me to the governor's lounge in Ikoyi." Zara's stomach twisted. The governor's lounge, the playground of Lagos's elite, a place where men like Keineto made deals over whiskey and million-dollar handshakes. She had no business being anywhere near that world, and yet here she was, driving straight into it. Instead, she sped out of the parking lot, making sure to take a few sharp turns just to rattle him. 20 minutes into the drive, Keineto finally looked up from his phone. "You drive like a madwoman," Zara smirked. "And yet, you're still alive."
Good. Wouldn't want your billionaire bones getting too shaken up.
You know, I did some research on you.
And?
Mechanical engineering, first class. Impressive.
You stalking me now?
Nah, nothing like that. Just curious. I mean, someone that smart could be designing cars, running their own company, doing something bigger. So why this?
Because life happened. Plus, not everyone gets to choose their path.
Ah, life. The go-to excuse everyone loves to use.
Not everyone's daddy hands them a billion-dollar company like a birthday gift.
Ouch, that almost sounded personal. Smirks. What's the matter? Jealous?
Nope. Disgusted.
Same thing, taxi girl.
Arrogant bastard.
Louder next time. I think the chauffeur up front missed it.
Keineto's smirk widened, but there was something in his eyes, something unreadable. "Interesting," he murmured. Zara clenched her jaw and focused on the road. She wasn't here to impress him. She was here to find out his weaknesses. They reached the governor's lounge, and Zara parked smoothly. Before Keineto stepped out, she caught sight of a black SUV with tinted windows parked across the street. Something about it felt wrong. Keineto hadn't noticed. He was adjusting his Rolex, looking effortlessly rich and untouchable. But Zara had grown up in the streets. She knew when she was being watched. "Keineto," she said cautiously, eyes on the SUV. "Are you expecting company?" He frowned. "Number why?" She nodded toward the car. "That SUV has been parked there since we arrived. It hasn't moved." Keineto's expression darkened. For the first time, Zara saw something flicker across his face. Not arrogance, not amusement, something dangerously close to fear. Without a word, he pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. Then he turned to her, his voice lower. "Stay in the car. Keep the engine running." Zara's heartbeat picked up. "Why? What's going on?" Keineto didn't answer. He opened the door and stepped out, adjusting his suit jacket as if nothing was wrong. But Zara wasn't fooled. Something was wrong. And if Keineto Obiagu, billionaire, untouchable Prince of Lagos, was nervous, that meant she should be too. Keineto disappeared into the lounge, leaving Zara alone in the car. She kept her eyes on the black SUV. Then, without warning, the passenger door opened. Zara's breath hitched. A man slid into the seat beside her, smooth, calm, and terrifyingly familiar. Obinna Obiagu, Kaineto's older half-brother, the one who had been exiled from the family for reasons no one dared to speak about. He was taller, colder, and deadlier than Keineto. His suit was sharp, but his smile was sharper. Zara's instincts screamed danger. "Relax, little driver," Obinna said smoothly, adjusting his gold cufflinks. "I just want to talk." Zara's hands stayed on the wheel, her pulse racing. "If you wanted to talk, you wouldn't be sneaking into my car." Obinna chuckled. "Smart girl. I can see why Keineto hired you." He studied her for a moment, then said, "You should leave while you still can." Zara frowned. "Leave?" "Working for Keineto," he said, voice dropping. It's a dangerous game, and you're just a pawn. Zara's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Obina leaned closer, his voice like silk. Do you know how many people want my little brother dead? Her stomach flipped. Obina smiled. Be careful, Zara Okoye. Some roads are better left untraveled. Then, as quickly as he appeared, he was gone. Zara sat frozen, the weight of his words pressing on her chest. Something was very, very wrong in the Obiagu family, and she had just stepped into the middle of it. Zara's hand shook slightly as she gripped the steering wheel, trying to calm the storm inside her. Obina's words wouldn't leave her head. Do you know how many people want my little brother dead? Her instinct screamed at her to get out, to walk away before she got pulled into whatever dark family war Kainito was tangled in. But she couldn't. Because if Kainito's family fell, royal rides would fall too. And that was the only way to save her father's business. So she stayed, even as she felt the fire getting closer. Kainito returned 20 minutes later, his suit perfectly crisp. But something in his posture was tense, like a man walking out of a battlefield, pretending he hadn't been shot. He slid into the back seat and exhaled heavily. Drive. Zara hesitated. Where to? Just drive. She obeyed, pulling away from the club. For the next 5 minutes, neither of them spoke. The silence felt heavy. Finally, Zara glanced at him through the rearview mirror. Are you going to tell me what's going on? Kainito's jaw tightened. Nothing you need to worry about. Zara bristled. Funny, because your brother just got into this car and warned me to run. Kainito's entire body stiffened. Slowly, his eyes lifted to meet hers in the mirror. Obina spoke to you? Zara nodded. Said I was just a pawn in whatever twisted game you're playing. Kainito let out a bitter laugh. Sounds like him. Zara clenched her jaw. You think this is funny? No, his voice dropped. I think it's dangerous. Zara swallowed hard. Why does your brother hate you? Kainito looked out the window, avoiding her gaze. Because he thinks I stole something from him, he said finally. And he wants it back. Zara frowned. What did you steal? Kainito's eyes darkened. Everything. Zara didn't press him further, but the air between them remained thick with unspoken truths. By the time she pulled into the company parking lot, Kainito had already buried himself in his phone, ignoring her completely. Fine. She wasn't here to be his confidant. She was here to take down his empire from the inside. But as she stepped out of the car and saw a sleek black Mercedes parked nearby, a bad feeling crept up her spine. A man in a grey suit stood leaning against the car, arms folded, watching them closely. Zara didn't know him, but Kainito did, because the moment he saw the man, his expression turned to ice. What now? Zara muttered. Kainito sighed. That is our biggest investor. Zara frowned. And that's a bad thing? Kainito looked at her, his eyes unreadable. That's a very bad thing. As they approached the Mercedes, the man stepped forward, offering Kainito a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Kainito Obiagu, he greeted smoothly. I was beginning to think you were avoiding me. Kainito forced a smirk. Now why would I do that, Mr. Kalu? Zara stayed silent, observing the way Kalu's gaze flicked to her, studying her with mild curiosity. And who is this? Kalu asked. My driver, Kainito said shortly. Kalu raised an eyebrow. Is that all she is? Zara's stomach twisted. She didn't like the way Kalu spoke, like he knew something she didn't. Before she could respond, Kalu turned back to Kainito, his smile fading. We need to talk, in private. Kainito nodded toward the building. Let's go to my office. Kalu chuckled. No, here. Kainito hesitated, and that was all Zara needed to know. Something was very, very wrong. Zara stepped back, pretending not to listen, but she heard everything. "I hear rumors, Kaineto," Kalu said. "Dangerous ones." Kaineto's expression remained blank. "Rumors are cheap, but when money is involved," Kalu smirked, "rumors become weapons." Zara's blood ran cold. Kalu continued, "Your brother is making moves, and I don't like chaos in my investments." Kaineto's jaw clenched. "Obina has nothing to do with royal rides." Kalu tilted his head. "Are you sure? Because he's telling a different story." Silence. Then Kalu's voice lowered. "You have 1 week to prove to me that your company is still under your control." Kaineto didn't respond. Kalu stepped back, smiling like they had just sealed a deal with the devil. "Don't disappoint me," he said. Then he got into his car and drove off. Zara didn't say a word as Kaineto ran a frustrated hand through his hair, tension radiating from him. But she had heard enough. He was losing control. His company was at risk. And now, his brother was coming for everything. For the first time, Zara wondered if she had underestimated the danger she had walked into. Because this wasn't just a war between taxis and billionaires. This was a war between brothers, and she was right in the middle of it. Zara had seen danger before. She had grown up in it, on the chaotic streets of Lagos, where you learn to survive by being smart, fast, and fearless. But this was something else entirely. This was rich people's war, a battle between brothers, billionaires, and betrayal, and she had somehow become part of it, a pawn or a target. She was about to find out. That evening, after Kalu's ominous threat, Zara returned to her father's house, feeling uneasy. Baba Okoye was outside, fixing the taxi's worn-out engine, humming an old Igbo song under his breath. Zara watched him for a moment, her heart aching. Her father didn't know how deep she was in. He didn't know that the company responsible for their suffering was now her battlefield. She turned away, heading toward the door. Bang! A loud crash from the street made her spin around. Her heart stopped. The taxi's windshield was shattered. A brick lay on the hood, surrounded by shards of glass. Baba Okoye dropped his wrench in shock. "Chineke, what is this?" Zara's blood ran cold. She rushed forward, grabbing the brick. Something was tied to it. A note. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. In bold red letters, it read, "Stay away from Kaineto Obiagu. Next time, it won't be a warning." Zara's breath came in short, sharp gasps. Baba Okoye looked at her, fear in his eyes. "Zara, what is going on?" Zara clenched her fists. She had stepped into a war, and now the war was stepping into her life. The next morning, Zara stormed into Royal Ride's headquarters, her fury barely contained. She didn't care about the security guards eyeing her suspiciously. She didn't care about the posh executives staring at her like she didn't belong. All she cared about was him. She shoved open Kaineto's office door. He was sitting at his desk, sleeves rolled up, looking like he hadn't slept. His eyes lifted lazily. "Zara," he said smoothly, "to what do I owe the pleasure?" Zara threw the note onto his desk. Kaineto's smirk vanished. His eyes darkened as he read the message. Then he lifted his gaze to hers. "Where did you get this?" "Someone threw a brick through my father's taxi," she snapped. "Because of you." His entire body tensed. Zara wasn't done. "I told you," she continued, voice shaking with anger. "I took this job to survive, not to get killed." Kaineto leaned forward, his jaw tight. "I never meant to put you in danger." "Well, congratulations," she spat. "You did." For a moment there was silence. Then Kaineto picked up his phone. "I'll handle this." Zara crossed her arms. "Oh? Just like you're handling your brother, your company, and the investors who want you out?" Kaineto's eyes flashed. "Be careful, Zara." She stepped closer, her voice low and sharp. "No, "You be careful, Kainito, because if I find out you knew about this, if you had anything to do with it, I swear I will destroy you before you destroy me." Something changed in his eyes, something dangerous, something that made Zara's heartbeat quicken. Then, before she could react, Kainito stood and took a step toward her, too close, too intense, his scent, his presence, his heat. Zara's breath caught, but she refused to move, refused to back down. Kainito studied her face, then whispered, "You're not scared of me." Zara's pulse pounded. "No," she murmured, "I'm not." Their eyes locked, fire meeting fire. Then, just as quickly, Zara stepped back. Kainito smirked, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Good," he said softly, "because things are about to get worse." That night, Zara barely slept. She kept replaying everything: the attack, the warning, Kaineto's words. Her gut told her this wasn't random. Someone wanted Kainito out, and whoever it was, they saw her as a weakness. She hated that. She wouldn't be anyone's weakness. She wouldn't be a pawn. So she made a decision. She was going to find out who sent that message. She was going to uncover every secret Kainito was hiding. And then she was going to burn down everything that tried to break her. Zara knew one thing for sure. Whoever threw that brick wanted her scared. They wanted her to run, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. Instead of running, she did the opposite. She decided to dig deeper. If Kainito wouldn't give her the full truth, she would find it herself. And when she did, she would use it to end this war once and for all. The next day, Zara waited until Kainito was distracted before slipping into the company's restricted archives. She had noticed something the day before, a sealed folder on his desk marked Confidential, Obiagu Investments. She didn't know exactly what she was looking for, but she knew this: Kainito's empire was built on secrets. And somewhere in those pages, she would find out why people wanted him gone. She scanned through contracts, financial records, and private emails. And then she found it, a document with Obina's name on it, and at the top, stamped in bold red letters, Terminated Partnership, Obiagu Brothers. Zara's heart pounded. Obina hadn't been exiled. He had been betrayed by Kainito. Before Zara could process what she had just read, she heard footsteps approaching. She quickly slammed the file shut and turned, only to find herself face to face with Obina. Her stomach dropped. He leaned against the doorway, watching her. "Curious girl," he murmured. Zara swallowed hard. "What do you want?" Obina stepped forward, his presence unnervingly calm. "I want the same thing you do," he said. "The truth." Zara frowned. "What truth?" Obina tilted his head. "That my dear brother has been lying to you, that he's not the hero you think he is." Zara folded her arms. "I never said he was a hero." Obina smirked. "Then why are you still here?" Zara hesitated. She didn't know anymore. Obina leaned closer. "Let me make this simple, taxi girl. If you want to survive, you need to choose a side." She held her breath. And then, just before walking away, Obina dropped a USB drive onto the desk. "Listen to it," he said. "Then decide if Kainito is really worth saving." Then he was gone, and Zara was left with a choice. That night, alone in her small room, Zara plugged the USB drive into her laptop. A recording played, and what she heard shattered everything. It was Kainito's voice. "Obina will never run this company, not while I'm alive. I'll make sure he loses everything. He was never supposed to find out." Zara's blood ran cold. Kainito had betrayed his own brother, and now she understood. Obina wasn't just after revenge, he was after justice. The next morning, Zara confronted Kainito head on. She stormed into his office, USB drive in hand. He looked up, startled. "Zara?" She slammed the USB on his desk. "Explain this." Keneto's face darkened as he listened to the recording. When it ended, silence stretched between them. Then Zara spoke, her voice cold. "You lied to me." Keneto exhaled, rubbing his face. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." Keneto hesitated, and that hesitation was her answer. Zara shook her head. "I thought you were different. Zara, please." She was already walking away, and this time she wasn't looking back. Zara met with Obinna. "I'm in," she said simply. Obinna smirked. "Good girl." But Zara wasn't doing this for him. She was doing it for herself, for her father, for every taxi driver who had been pushed off the road by royal rides. It was time to end the Obiago Empire, and she would be the one to set it on fire. She spent the next few weeks working from the inside, feeding Obinna critical information, patient, precise, relentless. Then came the final blow. A leaked report, bribery, tax fraud, illegal deals. The media erupted. Keneto was removed from his position. Royal rides collapsed. The empire fell. And Zara, she won. Months later, she stood in front of her own fleet of taxis. Her father's business, rebuilt from the ashes. But this time, she was in control. No more billionaires. No more betrayals. Just freedom. Then, one evening, a familiar black Range Rover pulled up beside her. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Keneto, the man she had destroyed, the man who had once underestimated her. He stepped out, his suit a little less perfect, his confidence a little more fragile. But his eyes, they still held the same fire. "You got what you wanted," he said softly. Zara met his gaze, "and you lost everything." Keneto exhaled, a small, bitter chuckle escaping his lips. "Not everything." A beat of silence. Then, his voice lower this time, almost vulnerable. "Do you regret it?" Zara hesitated. Did she? Maybe. Maybe not. Her fingers grazed the smooth leather of her taxi seat, the weight of her choices settling over her. Finally, she looked up. No. Her voice didn't waver. Keneto's lips parted, as if he had been expecting a different answer. Then, after a long moment, he gave a slow nod. And just like that, he got back into his car and drove away, leaving Zara to her empire, leaving the past behind, and maybe, just maybe, leaving a future where their paths would cross again. Thank you for watching and joining us on this incredible journey. Be sure to explore more of our stories on the channel or click on the next video YouTube recommends. If this story touched your heart, please like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more captivating African tales. Don't forget to tap the notification bell to stay connected to the wisdom and beauty of these stories. Until next time, stay blessed and keep shining.